You know what's funny about being 53? I think you don't think that you'll be having firsts anymore. I mean, not to be a pessimist, you just don't. I mean, you've done so many cool things in your life, but in my in this 52, 53, I've had incredible firsts. Um, the best thing in my life happened last year. Well, it'll be almost a year, and that's when I got to become a mom at 52, and I'll never forget that feeling. And I have to say, when this new chapter at work happened, and it just sort of morphed into this job. You know how some things are, there are like defining moments. I think for me and the Today Show, they asked me to fill in after the whole Matt situation happened for a week, and then they said, "Can you do it for one more week?" And then they said, "Can you do it for one more week?" And it's almost like, have you ever dated someone and it just works, and you're like, "Oh, this works." No one officially asks anybody to go steady. You just do it, and that's sort of what this felt like for me. Um, but like a real way that I can kind of describe it is I knew about it around Christmas time. So I was holding the secret. I told my mom, who, was like, "Oh my God, how exciting. When can I tell Umi?" That's her friend. Well, she wanted to know when she could tell Linda Stubbs and Umi. But more, so I was with them, and then Joel and I went to do the Rose Parade, and I remember it was the night before the big announcement, and everyone was saying, "It's tomorrow, it's tomorrow, it's tomorrow. You ready? It's tomorrow, it's tomorrow." And like, you know how you start to get anxious and scared. Like, it reminded me of when they used to substitute me in when I played forward for the Fort Hunt Federals in high school basketball, and they were like, "Go in." You're like, "Oh my God!" Like, you just don't want to mess it up. Someone passes it to you, you want to make the shot, and I can't. We'd come in from a long trip, and I was aching because I hadn't seen Haley, and I mean, I'd FaceTimed her, but my heart hurt. So I opened the door to her room, and I was praying she would wake up, which is something I've never done before. And all of a sudden, I hear this. I was like, "Oh my God, God heard me. Awesome." So I picked up this little girl, and I put her on my shoulder, and literally she just gave this, like, an exhale, just like a and just fell asleep. And I literally sat in there and started weeping. Like, I had tears coming down, and I was like, "Oh my God." Like, this is when life is perfectly right, like in this tiny little itty bitty moment. And I was just thinking right then, like, if this is it today, right here, me holding her in a room at 10:30 at night, if that's all there is, I'm so happy. Like, I'm so over the moon happy. And I put her down. She went to sleep. I walked in my room, our room. I gotta remember, when you look, it's only been a year since I moved in with Joel. I mean, you can only say my room for 50 something years, and you're like, our room. But I walked into our room, and I got in bed, and I thought I would toss and turn and have like a fitful night's sleep. I slept like a baby. And I woke up just like any other day. And I went downstairs like I did. I checked her on the monitor. I went and I scribbled my 3 things in my journal, which I usually write my 3 things I'm grateful for. And since Valentine's Day, the number one thing on every page of every day since I adopted Haley has been something that she's done. And without hesitation or thinking about it, I wrote about the moment that everything calmed down with her when I was holding her. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, it sort of felt like, it's that whole thing about having your loves in order, having your loves in order. If you have the way you mess your life up, and I've messed mine up many times, is your loves are out of order. You love your work too much. You love this too much. You mess that up. You love being popular more than you love being home. And so all those things get all messed up. And I felt like it was kind of in order in a weird way, even though, I mean, I have to admit I was scared because, I mean, this doesn't happen every day. So I go into work, and I couldn't say anything to anybody. The guy who drives me so nice, his name's Herman. He's like, how's the day? I go, good. I was like totally zoning out. He's like, oh, let me tell you about what happened the other day with my daughter. And he starts telling some long story, and my head is spinning. And I get to work, and I see Joe, the security guard, who I always see at the door. He's always looking out for us, and he's like, morning, Hoda. I'm like, morning, when you have a secret. Anyway, so we went about the whole thing, and we sat down on the set afterwards. And I got to say, I started kind of, I don't know whether I was sweating or pitting out or crying, or I don't know. I had like weird, kind of crazy, when your body's like, blah. So they played the open of the show, and I started getting teary, and I said, oh my God, if I have one of these weird breakdowns, because, you never know what's going to happen and what triggers something strange. But anyway, they did the open, and there's the show. And here we all are. And there it was. And I think it was the first couple of minutes. And then after that, I felt like it was like riding a toboggan. When you've been on before, you just ride it. But I think, it's not lost on me just what a important job it is. And that, people are counting on you to be strong and give them what they need to know, and also understand that people are eating breakfast in their bathrobes while you're talking, so try not to be obnoxious, stuff like that. It was funny because they were asking us some questions after the first day of school, and one of the reporters said, I wonder what it's going to be like. She was saying for her daughter, she said, for my daughter to look up at the TV and realize that, oh, two women anchor together, no big deal. Like, that's the way it is. So what? It's not such a novelty. The fact that we're talking about firsts in 2018 is interesting, isn't it? That's still a first. And I also think it wasn't planned as part of, we didn't say, well, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we put two women together? Right. I think we just ended up with two women who liked each other, who it worked. It just so happened to fall during this time in history. It's almost like one of those things like, oh, it happened. But honestly, like a few years ago, the same kind of thing could have happened with two women easily. But this happened to fall during a time where the country's, doing a little readjust. And, I think we're just happy to be in the moment somehow. I got to tell you, today's show anchors over the years, I've always been so in awe of them, because you really do have to deliver really tough things at an hour where people are getting their kids ready for school and serving breakfast, and they're at a very vulnerable place in their day. I think it's just like you live that way. But I think there's a responsibility to give the news, but I also think the way things are, you can get news anywhere, everywhere, all the time, 24/7. You may know it. I mean, it may hit your Twitter feed before we get it double confirmed, which is what we do. And so you may say, well, I already knew that. Like, that's just the way it works. But, given all that, I think the only thing we can do is, make it go down a little easier. And also just have some fun during the day, because it's the same story. It's like, the world's chaotic. So let's make a little sense of it, and then let's know that we can control some things, and some things we can't in our own lives, and let's just have some fun. So it'll be interesting to see what happens during that, how, and I wake up at the same time, I think, 3:15. Oh my God. That is so crazy.
Now you can't work out, though.
I know. 3:15 is, but by the way, it's a weird bunch of people who are up at that hour. Like, I know when my text goes off, it's like people from work. Roker's like, hey. Savannah's like, morning. I mean, it's like weird. Who are these weirdos up in the middle of the night, the dead of night? And when you get to work, it's like all lit up. People are having coffee. Good morning. They've been there since 2 a.m.